We play this rhyming game. It'll be something like, my first is something that you take pictures with and take phone calls with. And my second is the white hard thing in your body. And it's like phone bone. I'm like, good. Okay, this one is like the color of your shorts. And the second one is another word for smelly. And my 4-year-old daughter is like, pink daddy.
Roasted.
Okay, so let's record the intro now.
So what did milkless? Because I think we start with the name.
Two dads, we love our kids, but then we also need them to know that we're like pretty cool and it's not like a wimpy podcast. So, hey, hey, milkless.
Hey, welcome. Hey,
milkless. Call the audience milkless. What's up, milkless? Matt and Max coming at you.
What if that's it? That's our first take. On this episode of the podcast, we are joined by a good friend, Matt Rose. We've known Matt since college. He is a father of one. He works in Harvard's Graduate School of Education, and he's just a uniquely introspective, thoughtful human being, which I think you'll hear coming right up. This one is a two-parter. For no other reason, we ended up talking for a long time. We thought it was all real interesting. We're talking about, for lack of a better way of putting it, losing our shit, which is something we seem to keep coming back to. I guess there's probably a reason for that. Here we go.
All right, Matt, today we're here with a guest. We got Matt Rose with us from college. I'm so pumped to have him on here with us today. Just like tee up the topic, we're going to be talking about what happens when that dial gets turned up to 11, that emotional dial, whether it's your own dial, your kid's dial, when the emotional level just gets brought up to a level where the distortion is insane. So great to have Matt Rose on here with us. I'm going to call him Matt. I'm going to call Matt Naylor Matty or Matt or Naylor. So Matt, so Naylor, how do you want to get into this? I already messed it up already.
Oh, man. Yeah. Thanks for being here, Radovan. If I call you Radovan, Matt Radovan was your pre-marriage name. When you got married, you and your wife both took a new name. There was an old family name, which is very cool. So your last name is both Rose now, but old habits die hard. So I may frequently refer to you as Radovan because your first name was taken by me. I really appreciate you being here, man. You know, we kind of talk as we're starting to have friends on. We have a call beforehand and ask like, hey, what's something you want to talk about? And so this is a topic that really came from you, just when like the feelings just get so big. It feels kind of unmanageable. And I really appreciated that you recommended that topic because I think that's hard to talk about, but I think that's also a place that most, if not all of us, have been. So I guess a good place to start would be like, what made you want to talk about this in particular?
I mean, I knew it was something that I wanted to talk about since I listened to those early episodes, one about discipline and boundary setting. And then the next episode, I think, was about anger. And there's just some language that you all used at that time about like getting pushed to the limit or your kid pushing to the limit. And I don't know if you used the word rage or not, but that's a word that I have discovered, or a thing really that I've discovered in myself since having kids. I don't talk to a whole lot of people about it, so it felt like an opportunity. Again, I never thought of myself as an angry person or a rageful person. Probably discovered that in myself at some point in the first year, in part because I was a stay-at-home dad when our daughter was 3 months old. My wife had to go back she was in a degree program at the time and needed to finish it, and it required full attention. So childcare costs so high, it just made sense for me to stay home. And it seemed like a great opportunity. I am an only child and didn't have cousins, didn't babysit. I didn't really know what I was getting into.
None of us do. Even if you have siblings and nephews, there's nothing quite like it.
That's so true. Just the experience of being with this other person all day long who can't communicate with you, but they're dependent on you. And I felt like I needed to know her needs. So that's one aspect of it. And then just the monotony for me, just overwhelming and taxing and, not getting enough sleep. I'm worn out. I'm doing the same thing day after day. It's not really what I thought I was going to be doing. It's not what I imagined for my life. I love this little creature, but I don't know her yet. And it's really, really hard. And so all that came together into these just explosive moments. You teed it up, Max. Like, part of it is kids' big feelings, but part of it is our big feelings as adults. And so usually my own explosions were the result of explosions that she had.
And probably like you went there together in a lot of ways. Like that escalation can be very mutual.
It feeds for sure.
Well, and also just how silly do you feel? Not to like shame parents, but just in that moment, I remember screaming like at a baby that couldn't talk.
Yeah.
Like, what do you want?
Oh,
what do you want? And then it's like,
let's talk about that.
What am I doing right here?
Yeah.
What am I doing?
Yeah. So here was one. My daughter was maybe 2.5. She had like a little bit of pre-asthma. So there was a period of time where at night she was supposed to use this inhaler and she didn't always want to do it. Right. But it felt like essential to me. This is like this quintessential, like my job is to take care of you. You must use this inhaler. And one night, bedtime, she's supposed to use it, doesn't want to. And very reasonably for a 2-year-old, just screams, just right in my face. And instinctively, I just right back at her.
Yeah.
And immediately it's like, holy shit, that was the wrong thing to do.
Yeah.
Although partly in my brain, I think was like, this is good. I'll do this. And like, I don't like it when she screams in my face. So I will show her what that's like and she'll learn. Obviously, that's not how it went at all. And I think this is one of the things that's so interesting to me about this topic. It's not just like we fuck up and we let our emotions get away from ourselves and we explode. It's those like rationalizations where we still think it's kind of right, or we do it. I'll just talk me. I do it and it feels good when I feel like my kid really ought to be listening.
Hulk style, Hulk smash.
Yeah. Hulk smash. And like with righteousness, and part of me like doesn't want her to stop misbehaving so that I can continue to be upset because it feels good. Like that's some of like this dark stuff that I find really interesting and sometimes hard to talk about.
Yeah, fucking hell.
Right? You don't want to like lead with that at the bus stop.
Yeah.
No, but that's it. I've mentioned that before, where that feeling, and it can sometimes even feel that coming. And now I have awareness of it.
Yeah.
And half of the time, because of that awareness, I can divert and off gas and not do it. But then the other half of the time, it's like a sick thing. Your kids are kind of being a little bit a-holes, but then it's like, well, so am I. And then I'm just kind of like, not badgering them, but like, I don't know. And I'm just waiting for them to do the thing that I know that they're doing, because they were kind of going towards a bad place themselves. And I was going there with them and was just like, had 40 years of experience to like, I'm going to get you. Like, I'm going to be able to be like, see what happens? You see, bud? No, see, we don't act that way.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's a shitty thing.
Yeah.
It's weird. And Matt said it before, like you lose your empathy or something temporarily.
Yeah. When you're really angry and rageful, and like rage is like, I would use that word. That's an uncomfortable word to use around your kids. But I guess just insofar as like I've acted in ways that were embarrassing to me, I'd call that rage. My one time in the car when my daughter wouldn't stop screaming, said, do you want to hear what it sounds like when I scream as loud as I can? And then did it. It was super mature. And we had a great car ride together.
Yeah.
But one of the interesting things about this, when you talked about like, there's a part of you that wants it because it feels good. My interaction with you have always been that you're very like thoughtful, calm, mild-mannered. You can run ball. I don't want to take it like, I'm not calling you soft. I've played basketball against you.
That was a decade ago, man.
I know the fire is in there or was in there. But like anger is a natural part of all of us, probably particularly as men. We're trained that it is a more acceptable emotion than many other emotions. And I wonder if it's like that like shadow part of yourself, the darkness in there is like looking for an outlet and has found it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Does that resonate at all?
Yeah. I don't actually feel that way. It feels more like having a child transformed me and like introduced new things. And one of the things that it introduced, there are a couple. One is this responsibility for another person. I find that a lot of my rage perks up when her behavior threatens some part of this new identity of mine, whether it's like as caregiver, right? She's not doing her inhaler. She's not brushing her teeth. These like hygiene or like taking care of her body, well-being stuff that like I do feel responsible for, but yet as she grows, it becomes her responsibility. Or friends, part of my identity as like not physical caregiver, but like I am supposed to be teaching you like the right, pro-social ways to act, and you're not doing that. So it's that part of it's the responsibility. And another part of the transformation is like the loss of control over my life, which has been deeply, deeply unsettling for me.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know if I would have said this before I had a kid, but a desire to be in control of my life, a desire for autonomy. Turns out those were like really important things to me. It's funny. A lot of people have told me over the course of my life, like, you don't seem like an only child, which I take to mean like I don't appear outwardly selfish or self-centered, or I don't know, whatever the only child stereotype is. But I do think I probably missed experiences of not being the sole center of my family's life. And, you know, I was married for a few years before we had a kid. Like, presumably those things also give you a taste of that. I'm not sure why it wasn't enough to like calibrate me for parenthood.
Well, they take you from like 0 to 2, and then kids take you from 3 to 50.
Yeah.
And not to whack our children here, but like, you pick your partner.
Yeah, good point. Super good point.
You know, they just like come out and it's like, surprise.
Yeah. That's so true. And it was a surprise, man. Holy shit. Our daughter was not anything like me or my wife.
Yeah.
And I think turns out we thought we were going to have little mini-me's.
Yeah. Also, like I relate with you, Matt, on the lack of kind of control. We've talked about it on previous episodes that like, I was just kind of like good at most things. And like I picked a partner that we jived big time so we could figure stuff out. We hit a problem, bing, solved. With kids, it's like a 3-body problem where there's multiple variables that are changing all the time. You kind of can't really get your bearings.
Yeah.
You know how to do a 6-month-old? Surprise, motherfucker. 9-month-old. Like,
Yeah.
Totally different game. So it's like an exercise in just like crazy shape-shifting as a caregiver.
That's so true. And then on top of that, there's so many different ways in which you lose the illusion of control. And one of them, for me, has been like, if anything were to happen to either of these kids, the whole rest of my life would be fucked. And I don't have total control over that. And then we all had young kids during COVID. Talk about like a thing that was just like, hey, guess what? You're not in charge. This thing that you've always told yourself that you're basically in control is kind of bullshit. And I think kids really make that starkly apparent because you're also, unless you want to scare them, you're not really going to control their behavior. You can try to help shape their behavior, but you're not, unless you are truly going authoritarian style, you don't control them. So it's like the loss of control of the autonomy, of the choices you make in your life, the loss of an illusion that you're really totally in charge of the course that your life will take. All of that kind of falls away. And that's a very scary thing to look at. And because we're dudes, when we get scared, we get angry.
Like I had a recent blow up with my 2 older boys, and like the frequency, and this is how I gauge like if I'm moving in the right direction, like the frequency of my explosions on the kids took a drastic drop after starting Milkless with you, Maddie.
Wow.
I think just the awareness of talking about this sort of thing, Matt Rose, to your point, I was strongly into this control thing. Like, you know, watching like Caesar Milan, the dog whisperer, like if he can do the fucking dogs, I'll fucking do these fucking kids. They're my blood.
Yeah.
But then I stopped freaking out as much. Let's say I was having a blow up, screaming at the kids like once a week, once every 2 weeks. I hadn't done it in like 6 months.
It's a great stretch. That's a good run. That's like a good hitting streak.
Kudos.
Got my 6-month chip.
Yeah.
And then I fucking did the worst one I ever have. Coming home from a haircut, you know, our sons want like longer hair. We prefer shorter hair because it's like out of their eyes. You got to like gel your hair to keep it out of your eyes because you can't see. And that's just a line we're going to do. I need to be able to see your eyes.
Get a haircut, boy.
Yeah. Yeah, holy shit.
This is so stupid. But I said you guys could have long hair.
Okay.
But you have to keep it out of your eyes.
Okay.
I was the one defending them, right? We get haircuts and I'm like, okay, can we just cut them just to your eyebrows just so we can kind of, I'm going to get skewered by the wife here on this one because they just like talked me into like having the long hair. And then something stressful happened on my phone, unrelated, very stressful. They get like the halfway point of a short and a long haircut. So I'm probably going to get a little flack from my partner that I couldn't get it done. Paid for $50 haircuts because it's the only fucking place that was open. Basically got no haircut off their head. On the way home, I had said, maybe if you cut your hair, I'll get you like a lollipop on the way home. So bad.
Oh, yeah.
And on the way home, I'm going to say something that's pretty bad, but this is, don't judge me, guys. I had a 6-month chip. They started pouting about not getting a lollipop because I didn't realize that we had to go home. We were going to go to a friend's house for a party. And like, so the time was literally 0. We were already going to be late to this party and I don't like being late. And they're all pouty in the car. And I had just advocated for them and like let them keep their long hair. And I yelled into the rearview mirror, why don't you fix your fucking hair? Get it out of your fucking eyes. I just fucking went to bat for you. And just immediately was like, oh shit. Like I overdid it.
Might have gone a little hard there. We've all been there, man.
Yep.
But then I went deeper for another 25 seconds.
Oh, just telling him about it?
Yeah.
Just because, just kind of kept going.
Yeah.
Just did it like for another 20 seconds.
Uh-huh,
And then it was like, this is a horrible metaphor, but it's like when they're pulling the guy off the other guy and it's like, enough. That's enough, Max.
Yeah.
Like I basically had to go there with myself.
Yeah.
And then immediately put my hand behind, reach back. I'm like, sorry guys. Like,
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. Like I was super frustrated. It's not you.
Yep.
But it's like, had that email not come in, it was an outside thing. It was also like, I felt maybe a little bit hurt that they didn't appreciate that I was like, had been advocating them for months. And then they were mopey about not getting a lollipop, but they didn't see that. You know what I mean? And now I can see how silly that was.
Yeah.
But I just fucking lost it on them like bad.
Yeah, fucking hell. Well, man, thanks for saying that. I know that's not fun to talk about that shit. We've all done stuff that's that like.
Just trying to normalize it, guys.
Yeah, that's a very, very relatable story.
Yes, it is. There's a couple of things I think are interesting about it. In both of those stories that y'all have told, there is like, I don't know, I think about this a lot, man. You know how like the ultimate cardinal sin is to resent your kids? Like, don't have kids too early, you'll resent them. Don't let kids do this, you'll resent them.
Yeah.
But I think I didn't do. We had kids pretty late. I like still have my career, but there are times, and a lot of times it's during bedtime when my daughter just won't go to sleep. And like tonight, even we didn't have a big blow up, but I was a little shitty to her because I had like read the books, sang the songs, scratched the head, snuggled. She was kind of like, "You're leaving," and I just had this moment of like, "This is too much to ask of me. This is not fair. All I've been doing since I woke up today is just like helping out." And like in that moment, I did feel resentful. Like for Maxie, what you described, it's like, do you not know? I've been out here fucking advocating for your hippie hair for the last month, bro.
Yeah.
So I think that's interesting because I think that like resentment can sneak in for anybody, no matter how much you love your kids. But then the other thing that's interesting is like, Radovin, you identified this thing where you were like, it is that it threatens my identity in these certain ways. And Max, the thing that happened right before you set off was that they were moping despite how much you tried to do on their behalf. And you really have trouble when they're feeling down. Like you've talked about how you're such a positive guy. Your positivity is such a big part of who you are. You check in with negative emotions, but you're like, I'm not fucking hanging here.
Yeah.
And so you have trouble letting your kids be there. And it's probably like slightly different things for all of us. But what they all have in common is it's about us. It's something specific about us that particular thing lights a match and we're just a bomb. But I think understanding it is really good. I don't think it's the only thing. I think you can understand exactly what's happening and keep fucking doing it. But I do think knowing like, okay, this specific set of circumstances and the one that makes me angry in a way I'm surprised by it.
If I feel like my kids are mad at me, and if I feel that they are not appreciative of my efforts for them, that's a trigger for me and I can lose it.
I wanted to, before we move on from that, or it seemed like, it was interesting, Max, it seemed like you told the story and then you wanted to get into like the post game, the analysis of it and like the, well, how do I learn from this? What do I do differently? I want to go back to that moment because this was super interesting to me when you said, you know, like you stayed there for another like 20, 25 seconds, like you're hammering it home.
Yeah.
And that really resonates with me. I'm wondering like, how did you feel in that moment? Because this is one of those like sick feelings, the dark part of parenting, like almost relishing your child fucking up so that you can yell at them, or whether you relish it or not, once you're in it, like, again, for me, and I guess I'm looking to see if you feel this way too. I've been in those moments where I'm yelling. Part of me knows it's bad, but also part of me like keeps going because it feels good to let it out. And it's almost, I just try to tie a few things together. Like it feels like a way to re-exert some control over the situation when I'm feeling a little out of control or when I feel like, I don't know.
Well, there's two things. There's one that when I am like really, really fucking tired and overwhelmed and stressed and I lose basically the connection with my kids and I can feel that I'm on them.
Yep.
That's more of a naggy thing. And that kind of feels good. And I can feel that coming. And that's a sick thing I don't like. This one, I don't know. I haven't really digested it yet, but what it was I was really trying to like convince them for a long time, for like an hour, the benefits of getting a shorter haircut, when really like I was just like, I was losing, and I just kept losing.
Yeah.
And I kept like being like, okay, I can convince them. I mean, I ran a sales team of 150 people. Like, I'm good at sales. I can convince these guys. And then part of it was like, maybe we do a lollipop after, like the I'll suck your dick move, like the worst thing you can do. Like going under a bridge.
What you want.
Like awful. What you want. And like I'll do anything.
Yeah.
And it just, none of it worked. And I just was, I think I felt like I didn't have the power.
That's fucking A. Yeah. That's profound.
I couldn't get it done. I couldn't get it done. I couldn't get it done. My wife could have got it done, and the kids would have been happy. Yeah. And they would have got the haircut. And like, I'm the softie. And like, my wife's, and my wife very nicely, and she was right. She's like, next time I'll take the kids. So we don't pay $50 for them to take a millimeter off their head. Like, sorry. Like, and she was right. And it's like, I felt like I fucking failed. Couldn't close the deal. Yeah. And then on top of that, I was just, Radovin, I was like waiting for the trigger. I was like, okay, you just loaded up the powder keg. Yeah. Okay, you're playing.
They were going to do something. You're
playing with lighters above this bomb.
Max, that was fucking bomb. You said like 8 things in there that are so smart.
Hell yeah.
This episode is brought to you by Violet Archer and the Case of the Purple Martin. It's a chapter book with illustrations on every page. You can read it to them if they're 5, 6-year-olds, but then as soon as they can read, up till 12, 13, it's an insanely good book with plot twists like worthy of an adult's attention. I love this thing. I'm so proud of Matt and Milkless of putting this thing out. So if you want to support Milkless and get an awesome book for your kids, it'd mean a whole lot to us if you bought it. Check the podcast description for the link to Amazon and buy it today. And if you already have it, you can pop back into Amazon and give us an honest review. Thanks.
I have been thinking a lot about like a whole approach to parenting. Like, I know you guys have talked about authoritative and authoritarian, and I have been thinking about something that I don't know if this right here is going to make the cut or not, but I'm going to say the whole thing. I'm going to say the whole thing. So, I spent a lot of time doing religious studies stuff. And I'm not religious myself. Grew up Catholic, but atheist now. And reading these accounts of religious people who talk about finding freedom and liberation through submission. And they mean like submission to religion or religious practices or God, whatever. And I remember at the time reading this like a decade ago and being like, that doesn't make any fucking sense to me. But I've been thinking about it in terms of parenting. Do I want to be like the spectrum is like domineering versus, I don't know. I mean, submissive. Yeah. That's not quite the right word, right?
The word my wife uses, she says, I think there's a great deal of surrender involved in
surrender. Yes. Yeah. Exactly. I think that captures it for me. I think this idea of like, am I exerting my will over you, or am I submitting to
life,
your wants, desires, needs, life choices? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. Your choices as a human. And a lot of this has to do with like, how much do I view my child as a wholly separate person of equal worth as myself, or do I treat them as something a little different because I feel responsible for them in such a way that makes me want to exert my power over them, or feel like I'm responsible to do that? I have to do it.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. I don't know. This feeling of like, what more can I do? Right. Like this feeling of like, I've done so much for you. What more do you want from me? Yeah. Like that, what comes to mind is like, that's like fucking biblical stories right there. Like, God, what more do you want from me? Submission is the answer, like complete surrender. Yeah. And so I think about that sometimes. There's ways in which it doesn't play. Like you gotta set boundaries and structures and whatever. But in other ways, like where can I submit to my kid?
But then here's the thing: if you do full submission all the time, then you are a permissive parent that is like completely checked out.
Right.
And
so you kind of want to bounce back and forth between S and M. Like
there we go. I fucking knew it. It's just the word.
Sorry, go on, Maxie.
But that's true. It's like you need to have submission in your quiver. If you're into like holding the line, like making sure your kids are polite, disciplined, whatever. Yeah. Every once in a while, it's almost like you just got to have a get out of jail free card. Yeah. Every once in a while, it's like you can identify like, oh, the pot is about to explode. You can just completely check out that would be better in that situation.
Yeah.
To be completely permissive and try to be a big boy and not have such big feelings. Like I couldn't get it done.
But when I think about like the way you talked about and the way my wife talks about the idea of surrender, it's much less about like how much am I giving ground to my kid versus how much am I enforcing strict boundaries, and much more about like, what is my internal experience of this phase of life? Is it that I'm like surrendering to this moment in time that is kind of this way? And how am I balancing that with trying to exert control over it? Maxie, as you got to the end of talking about what happened with your kids in the car, you kind of threw your hands up in the air and you said, I had no power. Ridovin, you were describing like this feeling of a loss of autonomy, and then you were trying to do these things to keep her safe and take care of her. But the truth is that like totally keeping them safe is out of your control. And I think that all of it's wrapped up that like our ape selves, the way we assert our power and try to assert control. We've talked about this before. Like there's that fucking bomb clip of this silverback gorilla. There's like these gorillas fighting and he just goes in and throws them all in the other direction and then beats their chest. And then there is peace in the enclosure. There's a part of myself that just wants to handle it that way. Because that is power and that is control. And Maxie, we've talked about this before, like more and more the ways that we're learning to parent that really make kids feel like safe and good do not involve asserting your power that often. And I think as a dude, that feels fucking strange.
Also, like I love when my kids are kind of like doing what I want. But that's the thing.
Feels good.
We don't run a martial law house. So their general discipline is like water. It's just always sort of flowing. And that's a lot of work. Like if we were to be completely authoritative, my way or the highway, and I could like threaten hitting them, which I never would. I could be fucking scary as fuck. I did compliance like 100% of the time until maybe they were in high school and then start doing like heavy drugs and then hate me for the rest of my life.
So they get bigger than you, and then you got a real problem.
Right. So the way we're doing it, I like this way. I prefer this way, but it's not 100% foolproof.
And it also doesn't always feel good even doing it the right way. I mean, I think about like growing up, think about the like stories you read and the movies you watched and the books you read. Like how many of those were stories about men solving things through violence and power, basically, and winning. Those guys were my fucking heroes. And now I got to like have a 6-year-old be like, Dad, you smell terrible. And I have to be like, I hear that you're feeling that my smells are bad. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's a part of me that's supposed to be like, shut the fuck up, kid. I put a roof over your head.
Yeah.
Dude, we play this rhyming game, just a sidebar. We play this rhyming game. It'll be something like, my first is something you take pictures with and take phone calls with. And my second is the white hard thing in your body. And it's like phone, bone. I'm like, good. I'm like, okay, this one is like the color of your shorts. And the second one is another word for smelly. And my 4-year-old daughter is like, pink daddy.
Roasted.
I'm like, what the?
Boom.
What the hell?
I love not even close to rhyming too.
Yeah,
It wasn't
It doesn't
right.
rhyme.
It doesn't even rhyme. Oh man.
No.
Anyways, yeah, we're smelly.
Yeah, we are.
So yeah, I think there's something in that idea of like, and it's all wrapped up in like surrender and control and power and the way that feels kind of like ape natural to us to handle shit versus like this maddening way that it seems very clear is better for your children.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough.
I think I got a hard lesson in that from our daughter because, I mean, Max, I heard you say, if you wanted to parent in such a way that you were looking for maximal compliance, you could be scary, you could get the compliance. I mentioned this earlier. Our daughter is very different than me and my wife. We were both pretty compliant children naturally, I think. And our parents parented a little differently than my wife and I want to parent. But I have been shocked at how resistant our daughter is to those shows of force, threats, consequences, whatever. Even like a mild tone of voice, like nothing, it just doesn't work. Part of it is like a deep stubbornness on her part, but part of it is also like she's just emotionally calibrated in a way that like, you know, we've done this, I mean, countless times because I made so many mistakes over the first many years and still make them, but I'm making a little bit less of them. You know, she's not doing something she's supposed to do. It's time to turn off the TV, transition into bedtime routines. she won't do it or is whiny about it. Multiple calm patient requests have been made. We're starting to amp up. And even just like the slightest tone of like, hey, this is the third time I am asking you to do this. I need you to turn it off now. Even just that level of tone causes like the inverse. I push a little bit, she's pushing back. It just doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't get us to where we want to go. It takes infinitely longer. And this is what's led to some of the biggest blow-ups ever, where we just start feeding it. Mm-hmm. She's upset about whatever happened. And then the next layer is she knows that we're upset, and now that's making her upset. And then the final layer, which sometimes kicks in, is like it spirals into this like deep self-criticism on her own part. She becomes aware that she has made us upset and she must be a terrible kid who never does anything right and whatever. And so now it's like what could have been a 5-minute detour around bedtime is now like an hour long, like multi-level devolution of emotional states into this deep dysregulation, and then the need to repair all of it and talk her out of it while, you know, our patience was gone right out the gate. So to me, that's where like this idea of submitting crops in. I don't know. It feels different than being permissive. Like it's like it comes at it at a different way.
The other thing is like in the moment, it's hard to submit because once you say something, it's like you kind of have to do it in a way. That's one thing. But the other thing is like submitting on a longer time scale. You and your partner sit down and you jam about it. It's like what we talked about earlier before this, like looking up the sleep numbers for 6 to 8 year olds or 6+ is like 9 to 12 hours. A lot of our problems were about sleep, and we were kind of holding a hard line.
True story. We bumped ours back after I heard that 9 to 12 because I was just forcing my daughter to get in bed too early and she wasn't tired.
Dude, but don't you want that time?
Yeah, well, they can read in their room.
Yeah, read in their room. Yeah, when they get to that age. Yeah.
Even if they can't read, where's Waldo?
Yeah.
You know, and then I'll come check on you in an hour.
But I think when you feel it going that way and you were out of gas at the beginning of it and she's just going from like fighting you to being so hard on herself, I almost think of the surrender again, not as like, what do you give to her or how hard are you on her? And more like the idea of surrender would just be like, I'm going to be here as long as this takes. Instead of like, I need to fix this situation. And I say that and it sounds real good. This is not me a high percentage of the time. But I do remember that sometimes with a baby, when a baby's crying, if you're really fixated on getting that baby to stop crying, you will eventually whisper in that baby's ear, you're killing your mother and I, which I did one time.
You did or did not say that?
I might or might not have said that.
Of course he did.
But I didn't. I said it. I was like, if I say this in a nice tone, be like, baby. It's the creepiest thing I've ever said to anyone.
Yo, that's in there.
Shut up.
It's kicking around inside.
She was really young. Yeah, it's somewhere in there.
It is. Oh, it's in there.
I said it's so nice. Anyways, but if you go into a situation with a crying baby trying to make them stop crying, it's really hard to not get frustrated. But if you can surrender to like, eventually this baby's just going to have to stop crying. The only thing I can do is be calm. And I'm just going to be here until that happens. If you surrender into that, sometimes it can feel okay. But like if you have any fight in you, but your kid's going to find it, you know?
Yeah.
I think the best version of this for me, you know, you give the 10-minute warning, you give the 5-minute warning, and then you just like almost hold your breath. I know that this is going to be a fight. And my only goal is to stay as calm as possible. But if I'm going to hold that line, and then maybe you like acquiesce on like brushing teeth or like peeing, and maybe they're going to sleep in their clothes. You know what I mean? But it's like tonight I'm going to set the boundary that I'm going to play is bedtime at the hour that I want it to happen. Bring them as chill as possible into their bedroom. I will close the door and I will sit on the inside of the door like a fucking Buddhist monk and be there for them. Because this is now the new spot we're going to be in.
What really strikes me, though, Max, is that you are sharing an example with like a depth of patience that I do think I often lack. Like, end of the day, man, I don't like that. Sounds beautiful. I wish I could get myself in that state. I don't know. Like, have you cultivated that? Is that how do you get to that point where you can achieve that level of calmness and just let it roll off you? Because like that is a form of submission. Like the fact that they haven't agreed to do what you asked them to do isn't bothering you.
I think it's because I fucked it up so much. and had so many debriefs with my partner, like, yo, we got to figure something out here. Cause like, I can't scream at them every night.
Yeah.
That is just no way to live. Cause I was doing it just like, bed now. How many times? Bed now.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, great. The last thing they're remembering is I'm screaming at them every fucking night.
Yeah.
So I have probably hundreds of nights where I remember screaming at them or like begging them. Like I'm not great at it. It was almost like Groundhog Day. He goes, oh, I fucked it up. He died that day. Okay, he goes back again. I'll try it again. No, fucked it. Okay, try it again. I got to know that this is coming. And I know that like, if I show them that there is an end of the line and be chill, that there will be an end of the line, and I feel good when I go to sleep, and I don't feel like so I started kind of like loving that feeling. Like I didn't do it all the time, but it's similar to what I've said it before. Like when you play golf and you hit your first par or your first birdie, it's like, oh, so I am Tiger Woods sometimes.
Yeah.
So like, I am a pro athlete. Like, so when I nailed it, like on one bedtime, I'm like, okay, that is interesting. Like, how can I do that more?
Well, you're saying a smart thing too, which is like, even in those moments when it's fucking hard and your kids are really out of whack, you still need to have boundaries, and you need to have them for the kid, but also for yourself. Because if you have no boundaries, it's like, oh, it's just chaos out here.
Yeah.
Max, I also think like you particularly have a really unique ability to like take in information, think about it, and then act differently. And that sounds, when you say it out loud, it sounds like it shouldn't be that hard. But I think for many people it is.
Yep.
I find that knowing what I'm supposed to do is not as big a part of the battle for me as it is for you. I wish it were, honestly. The stuff that I've done that's been helpful with my daughter has been stuff like going outside and taking a walk before bed. There's two big things. One is like just being outside feels good, and we both like looking at birds. But I think more than anything, what I'm doing is like just trying to really like her and enjoy her company and like remember that she's this whole other person. Because I do think you said that earlier. It's like, how much do I really see them as a whole different person? How much are they some kind of like weird extension of myself and everything about me that's fucked up or whatever? And it's funny, I'm the best parent when I feel the most separate from my kid.
Yeah.
When I really am just seeing them as this person I live with. When I can come at like bedtime or something from that space, even if it's going to make us be up later, let's do something really nice that lets me see you. And then all the other stuff I'm trying to do is just like, doesn't even have directly to do with parenting. It's like just trying to find ways of being calmer, just in general. So I started doing fucking yoga. I never thought I'd do yoga, but it just makes me aware of the way my body feels more often. And like, then I can just be in a situation where I'm just at my house and realize like, oh, you're in total fight or flight. You're like ready to punch a donkey. What is your body doing? Why is your body doing any of this?
Yeah.
Your brain's not going to do that good if your body's doing this shit. And so, Max, I aspire to be able to just act the way I want to, so rationally. But I think that like a lot of the stuff that I've done that's been helpful has been like before that. Just trying to be calmer and more like attuned to my kid. All right, that is the end of part 1. Tune back in next Tuesday to hear more smart things that Matt Rose says. This Thursday, between part 1 and part 2, there will be a 1 equals now, just because we like to make things confusing. Okay, love you, bye.
Brought to you by Violet Archer. I like it because they're solving the case.